Yeah, that was a good episode. Hi, my name's Dan Gunther. Welcome to my review slash reaction slash first thoughts about the Lower Decks episode Veritas, the 8th episode of this first season. The first part of this review, as usual, will be spoiler free, but then I will get into spoilers on the second half. So first of all, my thoughts are this was an incredibly fun episode. If we're rating these episodes based on just how much enjoyment I'm getting out of them, this one would definitely have to take the top spot. I was grinning through the entire episode. I thought it was hilarious. There was not one moment where I was kind of not into the episode. Well, maybe one moment. I'll get there, but it's a very, very minor thing. And in retrospect, watching it a second time, it's actually pretty funny. So I really enjoyed this episode. There are so many references in this episode to past things to do with Star Trek. I've already got my list going for my Easter egg video, which will probably be a lot earlier this week than last week's was. But we've got so much going on in this. Our first serious teaser that comes in instead of, just a joke off the start. We get a teaser that leads us right into the action and is actually kind of serious. And some great guest stars, of course, that I'll get to on the other side of the spoiler warning. If people consider those spoilers, I don't want to mess that surprise up for them or anything like that. I think this one maybe was a little light on the characterization and more heavy on the plot / wacky hijinks. But I feel like this episode really worked in that regard. I also had the thought while I was watching it that this would have made a really good first episode of the series as well. Maybe not so much because we didn't get the introduction to the characters. Maybe that's kind of needed for it to really work. But I felt that as a showcase for the entire concept of this series, this episode really worked for that. It really showed what the Lower Deck crew's place on the ship is and how things are kind of compartmentalized and that sort of thing. So I don't want to say too much more before I get into spoilers. So suffice it to say, if you haven't watched this episode, I highly recommend it. I thought it was terrific. The writers did an excellent job. All the actors, their parts were terrific. I have very little to fault this episode with, and it was the most fun I've had watching Lower Decks this season, which is saying a lot because I've really enjoyed the series up to now as well. So with all of that said, let's get into the spoilers. So, like I said, this episode has a serious teaser. We see our four main characters locked in an alien prison or dungeon. There's kind of a bit of argument as to which is which in this, but we get our introduction after the opening credits to what, you could term the main antagonist of this episode, or the main person who's driving the plot forward, I guess. Clar, played by Kurtwood Smith. So Kurtwood Smith, of course, you may know from That 70s Show, is kind of probably his most famous pop culture role. In Star Trek, he's been the Federation president in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. He played Anorax in the Voyager two-parter Year of Hell, and he also played Odo's predecessor on Terok Nor, Thrax, in the Deep Space Nine episode Things Past. The episode basically centers around our four main characters giving what seems to be testimony at what would be an apparent trial, and it looks as though the senior officers of the Cerritos are on trial. They're kind of suspended off to the side while each of the ensigns is called forward to give testimony, and if that testimony is not agreeable to Kurtwood Smith's character, they get dangled over a vat of eels and threatened with death by eel. And as we get kind of the pieces of the story come together, each person has a very small, not very insightful part of the story. So Mariner and Boimler were late for their duty shift. They didn't realize the ship was on red alert, so they're missing a lot of key context to the story that they give. Rutherford, he has to reset his implant because Billups and Shax want him to load some Romulan tactical information into it, and that causes it throughout this episode to kind of keep malfunctioning and having a blackout and taking over for him, so he doesn't actually know a lot of what's been going on. And Tendi, which, I can't decide if her part of the story is the best or if Rutherford's is. I think I just really enjoyed Rutherford's. I thought it was great. But Tendi is assigned to clean the conference room, and Ransom leads a tactical team in there for a briefing. And when he asks if Tendi is the cleaner, she says yes. So he assumes that she's part of the mission and takes her along. And we get kind of what turns out to have been the rescue of Kurtwood Smith's character from Romulan space. But what this all is of course a party at the end celebrating the crew of the Cerritos and their bravery, not a trial. And I loved that reveal. I thought it was hilarious. I noticed a few people online, that's kind of the problem they had with this episode, was they didn't really like the ending, how that wrapped up, but I thought it was hilarious. And on the way, we get so many funny moments. From Rutherford being thrown into these situations where he has no idea what's going on because his implant's making him blackout, to Tendi revealing herself to be quite a badass while being on this mission as the cleaner. I thought that was hilarious. Mariner and her interactions with her mom, of course, are great. And Boimler is just kind of clueless throughout all of it. He is kind of has a part in Mariner's opening testimony where he just makes a complete fool out of himself because he has no idea what's going on. And it's amusing. That's not my favorite part of the episode, though. My favorite is definitely Rutherford or Tendi. I think those parts were terrific. I also really liked how in Tendi's testimony there was like censored bars over some characters' faces, and things were kind of bleeped out because she was censoring them from her testimony. That was fun. Kind of a little unreliable narrator coming into play there. So, it kind of calls into question, did she do all those martial arts against those Romulans? They kind of leave that a little ambiguous because, of course, like I said, she's an unreliable narrator. Ransom could back her up, though, of course, if that's true, but we don't get that in the episode, unfortunately. In the end, it really becomes a statement about what these Lower Decks characters are all about. And Boimler kind of testifies that, they're Lower Decks, they don't always know what's going on, and the senior staff doesn't read them in on a lot of the missions, so, they can't really give testimony. They have no idea what's happening and who's doing what and what the implications of the things they're doing are and that sort of thing. And this ends with Captain Freeman saying, the Cerritos is going to be an open book now. We're going to share everything with our Lower Decks officers. And then they press them on some fundamental questions about what happened, and they realize, no, what that's classified. I can't tell you that. And it just ends with kind of the status quo and again, just kind of like a restatement of the kind of mission statement of the show of what the Lower Decks people are all about. So I think if like a new viewer is coming in at this point, this would be a really good episode to kind of just explain the premise of the show and what the creators are going for, because I think that came through really loud and clear in this. So on top of Kurtwood Smith, we also get John Delancey reprising his role as Q, which of course was a lot of fun. We knew from the interview that they gave a few weeks ago that he wasn't going to be a focus of the episode, but what he did in the episode, what little parts he had, I really did enjoy. I thought it was great. I mentioned on the Positively Trek podcast that I thought it would be really funny if Q was kind of known as this entity that just pops in on all kinds of ships, not just the Enterprise or Voyager, but shows up all the time on various ships. And according to this episode, that seems to be kind of what happens. Everyone's familiar with him, and he regularly, puts the crews of ships through various trials and contests and that kind of thing. And, like even the Lower Decks crew members seem pretty familiar with his antics and what he's all about. So I thought that was a lot of fun. I think there's, it just Q fits this whole Lower Decks paradigm. I think he just really fits in well with the tone and kind of ridiculous nature of the show. Like I said, like not a lot of depth in this episode, but what's there I really do enjoy. I do think there's, some depth to it. I think there's some interesting lessons to be learned from it. And if you listen to Positively Trek, our review episodes, you know that at the end of each episode we go into what kind of the main lesson for the episode is. So I'm kind of working out what I think the main lesson for this episode is. But if you want to find that out, listen to the podcast. I don't have it quite put into the words I want to use yet. So, but yeah, highly recommend this episode. If you haven't been watching Lower Decks, I don't know why you're watching this video, but regardless, check out this episode. It may not be for everybody, but I thought it was really funny. I thought the humor was spot on, and all of the myriad references to past Star Trek, even like a cheeky animated series reference, which this show's becoming known for, with kind of a deep cut with a 40-foot tall Spock on Philo's reference, which I thought was terrific. So this series just keeps surprising me with how much I'm enjoying it. But yeah, I'm eager to hear what all of you out there think. Did you agree with me? Do you think this episode is terrific, or were you not really wowed by it? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, of course, as always, to the Patreon supporters for their help in bringing these episodes to you. I truly do appreciate it and couldn't do it without you. To everyone else, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing if you feel this video is worth it. And for everyone else, thank you just for watching. That is literally the best thing you can do for me, is watch my videos and let me know what you think. So thanks so much. I will see you in the next video. Until then, as always, live long and prosper.